Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Bosley, and for the better part of the past 26 years, I've had the most distinct pleasure and honor of working alongside and coaching some of the world's top performers. What we do here each week is bring their ideas and strategies and wisdom directly to you. If you feel like you're that hamster stuck on the hamster wheel of life and you're spinning and just not really getting anywhere, well, you have landed in the right spot. The Bamboo Lab Podcast is written, created, and broadcast just for you, all you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. All right. We have a really cool guest on today. Someone I've known for, we figure, almost 17 years we've known each other. But before we get to him, I want to share with you a few of our latest statistics. As of this morning, we are being broadcast, followed, and listened to on 6 continents, 30 countries, 47 states, in 650 cities across this great nation of ours. I want to start off by reading one heart letter out today. This came from a gentleman by the name of Tom, and he was referring to this last week's episode with Sam Calawart. And he said, "Great listen this morning. Sam's calming voice is perfect for her line of work. Great session, as even the best leaders need people like Sam on their team." Thank you, Tom. I couldn't agree more. This episode is dedicated to 2 young people, one not so young, but to Dawson and Adeline. As they start their first week of school this week, Dawson as a sophomore in college, Adeline as a 7th grader. Make this your year, guys. We're so very proud of both of you. You're starting a new chapter and a new journey in your life. This is your opportunity to get out there and take it. We love you both. All right, let's dissect. All right, today we have a friend of mine, a person I've worked with. He's helped me. He's helped my son. He's helped many of my friends and family over the years. We've got Dr. Ben Gillis from Gillis Family Chiropractic out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'll share his bio here. Dr. Ben Gillis grew up in Escanaba, Michigan. He's a Yooper. He graduated from Lake Superior State University, where he played basketball for the Lakers. He graduated then from Parker College of Chiropractic and opened his own practice in Wyoming, Michigan. He shares his enjoyment with his wife, Krista, who I believe celebrated their 12th anniversary this year in June, and their 2 young children, Kinley, who's a 5th grader, and Brooks, who's a 1st grader. When he isn't outside or at the park with his family, you will often find him playing rounds of golf with his friends. Dr. Gillis is also a very good speaker. He does a lot of workshops within his office, but also prior to COVID, he was doing a lot of workshops and talking and training and speaking across the community in Grand Rapids. And I've had the opportunity to see him speak a couple of times, and he is fantastic. He's probably the most competent chiropractor I've ever met in my life. And I can say that without a doubt. He is. He's also working on a book. A publisher reached out to him, and he's working on a book right now that will come out sometime in the future. Not a real title yet, but maybe there's a working title, but the idea is making disease optional in your life. And that is such an important book. That's going to be something I'm going to read as soon as it comes out. I did some research on Dr. Gillis over the past few days here, even though I've known him for a long time. I looked at his reviews online. He's got reviews from Yelp, Google, Facebook, and hundreds of reviews, not just a few, but hundreds of reviews, 4.9 out of 5 stars. So check him out. He has a really unique approach called the Gonset approach. He uses, I think there's only a couple of other chiropractors in the community in the Grand Rapids area who practice this. He has a very holistic approach, the way he looks at medicine and the expertise and the benefit he offers to his patients. So without further ado, Dr. Ben Gillis, welcome to the Bamboo Lab Podcast, my friend.
Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate you having me on your show today.
Hey,
looking forward to our time together.
My pleasure. We have 2 Yoopers talking on the phone.
That's right. We may have to have a pasty afterwards.
Or at least a beer.
Exactly.
It might not be too good for our clients and patients for the rest of the day, though. So maybe we'll do that next time I'm in Grand Rapids.
Right.
Well, Ben, I've gotten to know you very well over the past 17 years as working with you, being a patient of yours, being a friend of yours, being in community groups and organizations together. But the Bamboo Lab podcast and our Bamboo Pack members want to know who you are. So you could tell us, who is Ben Gillis?
Well, a little bit of the history or background.
Yes, please.
So I grew up in Escanaba, had two wonderful parents that gave me every opportunity to be successful in life. I had a sister, and really just enjoyed activities, sports. And as I went on and kind of led me into the path where I'm at, when I went to Lake Superior State, before my first game of my first season, literally all I did was bend down and pick up a basketball, and my back popped, and there it went.
Oh, boy.
So then I tried everything, traditional medicine. I was icing, heating, massage, stretches. Nothing was helping, pain meds, muscle relaxers. And I ended up having an MRI, and it showed that I had 3 bulging discs in my lower back. Well, what do you think they recommended?
I would say medication.
And surgery.
Or surgery.
Yeah. So I was pretty frustrated. I felt helpless. Luckily, one of my teammates, Dustin, he referred me to a chiropractor. And from that point on, a couple weeks worth of adjustments had changed my life. So I knew right then that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I changed from wanting to be a teacher and a coach to be a chiropractor. And kind of that led me on the beginning journey to where I am today.
Was that chiropractor in Sault Ste. Marie?
Yes, it was.
Oh, wonderful. So, but do you think, and when looking at your style, Ben, and knowing you over the years, you still use that philosophy of a teacher and a coach with your patients? I know when I've been in there lying on that bed that does the really cool massage as I'm relaxing my muscles, and when watching you work with Dawson years ago, you take that style and that attitude of a coach and a teacher to your patients, and I'm assuming to your team as well.
That's exactly right. We try to just pride ourselves on communicating and teaching. If the definition of doctor is a teacher, so a lot of people don't even realize that. And so that's the goal. I think people need to have the whole understanding of what's going on so they can make the best decision when it comes to life and health.
I love that. So you grew up in Escanaba, which obviously I am very close to Escanaba now as I moved north. During that time, I know you played sports, and we have a lot of connections up here. In fact, the gentleman who read whose heart letter I read this earlier in our episode is a connection and a friend of yours on Facebook, and I know you know the family well. Who was your greatest inspiration growing up?
I would have to say my father. He was a man. I mean, both my parents, but my father gave really unconditional love. I watched him give love to my mom, my sister, and I. He was a dedicated provider for the family. He had a really keen sense of competitiveness, caring. But one thing I really learned from him is with 2 ears and one mouth, he used them very proportionally. He was a great listener, and he always cared about other people.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Get the latest insights from top mortgage pros on Mortgage Connects, a podcast by MGIC. We interview thought leaders from across the industry to share their wide-ranging expertise and candid views on critical market developments and current housing trends. Our guests reveal highly effective marketing and referral strategies, training tips and best practices, and what you can expect from the mortgage market in the future. Hear from experts like best-selling author Todd Duncan, U.S. Bank's Lenny McNeil, and Freddie Mac's Danny Gardner. Listen to Mortgage Connects on your favorite app or at mortgageconnects.com today.
Two ears and one mouth. And when you say, and I like this one, so this is a trick question, or it's a spontaneous question. Unconditional love, how did he exhibit that to your family? What were some examples or an example where you say that's unconditional love?
I think he always put our family first, and he dedicated time. Time was a big one. And to me, now being a father, that's one thing I try to convey and just the present time consciousness, being present with the kids. Life can be busy, but the time that he spent with my sister and I, he was present, and that really kind of went a long way. And I try to do the same thing with our kids.
Ben, I still remember when you and Krista came over to my house. I had a little party going on, and that's when you told me you two were engaged. So that was, 12 years ago? 13?
Yeah, probably 13
years ago. I still remember exactly where I was standing in my living room. I remember that to this day for some reason.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, I don't know about the chiropractic industry during the pandemic and quarantining and the social distancing. I'm assuming that had a big impact on how you can care for your patients and your team. What did you learn, and what would you say is your greatest learning over the past 3 years from that?
Well, I think, one of the positives is COVID really put health on the forefront of many people's minds. Mm. I think sometimes when you go through life, it's easy not to think about your health when things are going well. But the minute something's taken away from you, like health, it really puts you in the forefront of what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen again? What can I do to better the health of myself, my family? And from what I do as a profession, I think that actually is a good thing.
I could agree more. I saw in your looking at your Facebook post, the Gillis Family Chiropractic Facebook. I think it was a couple of days ago, maybe it was even yesterday. The quote was, "The greatest wealth is health," and I think that's an incredibly important phrase and quote. And I think you're right. I mean, it's like, health is like breathing. I've been up for the past 5 hours or so, 5.5 hours. I haven't once considered the breath I'm taking. But if somebody came into my office and sucked every bit of oxygen out of this room, I guarantee you within a few seconds, I'd be thinking about taking a breath. I think health is the same way. We take it for granted until something like COVID or something more personal that might affect us that's not COVID happens to us. And we start realizing that something that we should have been doing all of our lives, we better make this a priority for us.
That's right. I mean, it really, especially, you think of health, but, the immune system. When you really dive in the statistics of COVID and the people that were being affected, it was the individuals whose immune systems were weakened. And some people didn't even know that. People that had strong immune systems may not have had any symptoms. Mm-hmm. So there was a big gap of, statistically speaking, in the immune system strength really was the big difference maker for people.
Yeah, coincidentally, Dawson and I had COVID mid-August of last year, and we got it again this year, the exact same week of the year. And same symptoms. He was sick for a full day and then got better. I was sick for about 3/4 of a day and got better. And it was like almost a blueprint from one to the other. It was like a carbon copy of the exact week, same symptoms, same display for both of us, and still, then tired for 4 or 5 days after. I was a little more tired than normal. So hopefully that means we have a pretty good immune system, because it didn't really knock us down. I
think your immune systems are working the way that they should be, which is great.
Good. I want to share a real quick story that I've shared this for years. And Ben, I'm not sure you remember this. Well, I know you remember seeing Dawson. When my son Dawson was probably 4 or 5, he was diagnosed with asthma, even though they didn't call it asthma at the time, and still haven't called it asthma. But he had some real struggles when he was younger. He very seldom has them anymore. We had nebulizers, and we had, the albuterol puffer and the rescue inhaler and all the stuff we needed to use. But there were times where Dawson, because he was such an active child, running and moving all the time, he would have problems. And I was talking with Dr. Gillis one day at a business function, and he said, bring him in and let's see what we can do. And I remember we went in, I think we were there 3 or 4 times over the course of a few weeks. It wasn't, really intrusive, and I had no problems with it, and Dawson didn't either. And I trusted Dr. Gillis to the core. And after a few times with Dr. Gillis, his breathing dramatically improved. I don't know how, if it was witchcraft or what it was, but since that time, it has gotten better and better. We haven't had those really dark, deep episodes. Every few years, I think maybe once or twice he was in the hospital after that, but it can dramatically continue to get better and better to this day, where, maybe a couple of times a year he'll have to take a puff on his albuterol breather, his rescue inhaler, just because he feels a little shortness of breath. So I don't know what you did, but I'm a big fan, and I can attest that it changed something in Dawson that is unexplainable to me, but I'm sure very explainable to you. And I've also had the privilege of going to Dr. Gillis a few times in the past with issues with my shoulder. And what I really liked about your style, Ben, is so often I had never been to a chiropractor before that ever, but just going to standard medical doctors, the family doctor and things like that, it was all come in. What do you feel? Okay, quick little in and out, and then here's your prescription. And with you, I felt like you were standing there telling me what you were doing as you moved and torted my body around, what it was going to do, and you educated me through the process. And I have a feeling that's why your practice has grown so dramatically over the past 15 to 18 years. And where I think I saw somewhere where you were ranked #1 chiropractic clinic in the state of Michigan. So I'm not going to tout that, but I did see that somewhere. So when I asked you on the phone a couple of weeks ago, you said, I don't know. I don't pay attention to that stuff. Now, most people would have that advertised everywhere they go. So, but a personal question for you, Ben, I'd like to ask every one of my Bamboo Lab podcast guests this question, and you can go as deep with it as you'd like. Over the course of your life, growing up in the Upper Peninsula, going to Lake Superior, getting your doctorate, your doctor of chiropractic, now your family, your clinic is growing. What is the most difficult thing you've ever gone through in life?
I would say the greatest pain that I ever went through was, I back up just a little bit. It was just about 8 years ago, I got a call from my mom. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Well, the following day, it was actually that next morning, I remember it vividly. I got a call from my dad, and he had been diagnosed with kidney cancer. His was a pretty serious situation. He had a melon-sized tumor, probably, I think it was 14 centimeters that had taken over his left kidney. So really within a matter of less than 24 hours, both my parents had been diagnosed with cancer. You want to talk about a punch to the stomach.
Oh, wow.
So from that, though, my dad's was a lot more serious, and he had to have surgery. And he battled cancer for about 4 years before he lost his battle with cancer. But the whole progression from when he was diagnosed with cancer to surgery to doing good for like a year and a half, then the cancer coming back, and the whole progression of watching a 6'5", 220-pound strong man literally wither away battling cancer. That probably was the most painful thing that I've ever been through in my life, hands down.
Wow, that's a very, very life-changing 24-hour time frame. Well, I got to thank Mr. and Mrs. Gillis, and please, Mr. Gillis, rest in peace. You have raised and created an incredible man here in Dr. Gillis, and he's going out and changing the world and finishing all of the things that you started in life. So I wish I would have known that sooner. I would have dedicated this episode to both your parents as well. So that's a tough one. So, looking back on that, Ben, what was a learning that came from that for you that you were able to take forward in your life with your family, with yourself, with your patients, and things of that nature when you watched both parents being diagnosed within 24 hours and your dad really fighting valiantly for 4 years in this 6'5", 205-pound man and watching him wither away? What was a life lesson for you in that time frame?
I think, one thing is really every day is a blessing. We never know what the day, the moment really entails. And so just never take your health, never take your life for granted, because literally one diagnosis can flip you upside. And I think, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is you can either pay the price and take small steps now to better your health, or on the opposite side of that is you can do nothing, and then ultimately, most likely, you have to pay the price later. So why not take small steps right now to change your life and the health? Because really, what is our most important asset?
It's our health.
Right. Because we can have all the time in the world, but if we don't have our health, what is it worth? We can have all the money in the world. Do you think Steve Jobs, what he gave up his $55 billion to get his health back? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So that would be kind of the one big lesson is every day is a blessing. And why not take steps now to set yourself up for a better tomorrow?
Okay, I'm gonna dissect that for a minute. Bamboo Pack, please take note of this. Write this down. what Dr. Gillis has shared so far that I want to just kind of summarize quickly and validate. Number one that I got is the definition of a doctor is a teacher. And Dr. Gillis has taken that idea, that definition, and applies it with all of his patients and with his team. And think about what you're going through right now, each one of us. Think about some of the hardships, because we're all going through hardships at any given time. Think about what Dr. Gillis went through in a 24-hour time frame, a call from his mother because she was diagnosed with breast cancer. The next day, within 24 hours, a call from his father diagnosed with kidney cancer. Watching his idol at 6'5", 205 pounds strong man who shared unconditional love with his family, was caring, competitive. He gave his time and he put his family first, was an incredible provider for his family. I mean, you look at a man like that and you say, he's indestructible. He's 8 feet tall and bulletproof. He's Superman. And then watching him wither away over the course of 4 years and fighting valiantly and honorably, but then finally succumbing to the loss, to the battle to cancer. And then looking at that and saying, okay, we all go through something like that. Maybe not as dramatic, maybe not quite in such a short time frame, but we're all going through something. How can we take a lesson from that difficulty we're going through, that pain that we're going through? Like Dr. Gillis has said here, the lessons he learned from that is every day is a blessing. Never take your health and life for granted. And either you can pay the price now with small steps to improve your health, or you're going to pay the price later. Going back to a concept we've talked several times on in the Bamboo Lab podcast regarding choosing your pain. You choose the pain of grind and hard work and change now, or if you don't choose that pain, the life will choose the pain of regret for you later. This is a perfect example of what he offers his patients into the community, is the ability to choose that pain of right now, making those small changes, those steps forward, so that we don't choose the pain of regret of loss of health later on down the road. All right. Well, Dr. Gillis, you've been competitive in high school and college, and I know you're competitive in business. I've seen you in action. What do you call it at your stage in life right now as a husband and a father and a business owner and a doctor and a community leader? What do you consider to be a win in your life?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Doug Downs, host of the podcast Stories and Strategies for Public Relations. If you work in PR, communication strategy, marketing, stakeholder engagement, we cover them all in Stories and Strategies. This podcast is different from other PR podcasts because it's not a sermon. We interview experts from around the world, psychologists and cognitive neuroscientists, researchers looking at how artificial intelligence will impact communication ethics, senior leaders in business and corporate communications. Check it out, Stories and Strategies for Public Relations on any podcast directory.
Well, there's several things that really come to mind. First one is my time with my family. I think my family is my world, and just being able to enjoy. I know how fast time goes. It's like you blink an eye, another year is gone. So I think a win for me is every minute that I get to spend with my family, especially my children. Mm-hmm. Another win for me is I get to see amazing things in the office on a day-to-day basis, and just being able to see patients who come in who, for whatever is going on, their life is turned upside down because of health issues, being able to restore health and keep patients healthy. That's really my purpose in life.
Sure. Is there any opportunity or any look at you opening up an office up here? We could use you. I'd love to come up to the UP, every other week or so. Well, you always have a place to stay, so.
Yeah, thanks.
And we need you up here. I need you up here.
If you work on a private jet, I'll come up on Tuesdays.
Let's get this podcast up and running first. I've been doing this thing, Ben, called rucking over the past couple of months, where I go for usually a 3.5 to 4 mile hike through the trails, and I put a weighted backpack on, and I didn't have any sand for a while, so I threw a block of concrete in there, and it's roughly 35 pounds. And I thought I was doing really well until last week, where I started not sleeping at night because my neck hurt, my shoulder hurt, my hips hurt, and my back hurt. And I'm thinking, where's Dr. Gillis when I need him? It might be worth a 6-hour trip down to see you.
Right. I think so.
Maybe you could teach me how to do it better. Everything was perfectly fine for me health wise and feeling good until we were in Hawaii in March, April of this year. And I decided to jump off, do some cliff jumping. It was actually literally called Black Rocks, like we have up here in Marquette. Into the ocean, and I climbed up this lava rock, and I didn't have any shoes or anything on. It was like walking up they're sharp, jagged rock, and you're not supposed to climb this. I thought it was something people just did it. I didn't realize I thought it was a tourist attraction. Really, it had signs everywhere, do not climb this. Well, I did because I started, and I couldn't climb back down because I was halfway before I noticed. And I got up there. As soon as I got up there, I just jumped into the water. And by the time we got to dinner that night, my hip was hurting. So I don't know what hitting water does to a hip, but it did something. Or maybe it was the climb up. I'm not sure. But I'm starting to realize my age a little bit more. So I want to ask you a question. Going back to what you said, either pay the price now and take some small steps or pay the price later. Can you share with the Bamboo Pack audience what would be some small steps? What are some things you would recommend to most people?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things that you could change, right? I mean, you take a look at your lifestyle from a wide variety of things. To me, I mean, each person and each individual is slightly different on what they would maybe benefit from more. But one of the things that, I mean, can be sometimes underthought of is actually sleep and how important sleep is. You know, you take a look at, and everybody needs a little bit difference as far as the amount of time in sleep, but if the consistency of your sleep patterns make a huge difference. The other component that would be a huge thing is a lot of people like to snack before bed. When you snack before bed, your body now has to work for several hours into sleep, and it really decreases the amount of deep sleep that you're able to get into. So consistency of a sleep pattern and pulling that snacking couple hours before bed can make a huge difference in the quality of your sleep. I would say that would be one thing, you know, just a quick change. You mentioned breath work when we were talking earlier, and breathing is a huge thing too. But the other thing that's a simple thing is movement. I mean, setting up a pattern, even if it's walking 3-4 times a week, increases energy levels, good for the overall health. I personally like to add in like some high intensity workouts several times a week to really condense. So I use what's called a Carol bike.
Okay.
And it's a high intensity bike. And what it does is it's like an 8.5 minute workout. And it's the equivalent of a 45-minute jog.
Okay. No, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm also, go ahead, Brian.
No, go right ahead. I was going to ask you, it's Carol bike?
Carol.
Okay.
Just like in the name, Carol.
Okay.
Carol.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I at my house, I have an infrared sauna that I like to do, just to sweat out toxins. I also do cryotherapy or cold showers, which is really beneficial, stresses the body in a good way.
I love those.
Yeah, have you ever read like that, like the Wim Hof method?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I follow him on Facebook. He's out there.
And cold standpoint. Yeah, he is. But cold showers has been something that's simple to do right in the house.
So so far, some of the things for the Bamboo Pack that we could, going back to an episode from previous episode for the Bamboo Pack listeners, listen to Gino Lechuga's episode. It was probably back in the high 20s or episode 25, 28. I'm not sure. He talked a lot about some simple things he does just to stay in shape. And I like what Dr. Gillis is sharing because this is it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. But establishing strong sleep patterns, consistent sleep patterns is incredibly important. I know that's one I struggle with a lot. I really do. In one way, and I don't snack normally before dinner. I'm usually have dinner and maybe have a snack, then a couple, 2-3 hours later, I'm in bed. But, you know, cutting down or avoiding those snacks before dinner, I didn't realize until just this moment that actually disrupts your sleep, your deep sleep pattern. I didn't know that. I just thought you gained weight. So that's a great one. And breathing. So for anybody who wants to learn more about breathing, go back to the episode number 41 with Sam Calawart. Just this past week, she talks a lot about some of the deeper breathing methods and breath work methods. and movement. I think that's a big one for most people. I know it is. It was for me for a while, maybe during COVID primarily. I gained my quarantine 15. And it was February of 2021. I started realizing I'd gained 15 pounds, and I was at 211 pounds or something. And I just said, I went out and bought an Apple Watch, and I set goals. And within a year, I dropped 30 some pounds, and I'm at about 185 right now. And I feel so much better. So for me, having an Apple Watch or some type of a Fitbit or Garmin where you can track and have a goal, and you know how many active calories you've burned. I can count right away how many minutes I worked out today. I can count how many times I've stood up, and I can count my steps. That was the biggest impetus for me. Just that movement. And I love the idea of the infrared sauna. I love taking a sauna. I don't do it often because I don't have one here, but I do a lot of the cold showers. I take a cold shower every day. I don't even turn the hot water on. And when I get an opportunity to jump into a river or a lake, I'll do the same thing. But those are just some very basic things we can do. Sleep. Focus on getting the proper amount for you. If you're exhausted all day, you're probably not getting enough sleep. Snacking before you go to bed. Give yourself 2-3 hours of no food, then you go to bed. Focus on that breathing. Move. Just get up and move. Like Dr. Gillis, even if it's just a walk, get up and go for a walk 3 or 4 times a week. If you can apply some high intensity workouts in there, whether it's a carol bike or a run or rucking or hiking or whatever it might be, put that in there. And if you have the opportunity to sweat those toxins out in a sauna, do it. But we all have the opportunity to take cold showers. Everybody has a shower. Right. Everybody has hot and cold water. Just turn it to the point where your body is just stressed enough, but yet you're not getting frostbite. So
the other thing too is, just being aware of sugar intake. Most people don't really calculate sugar and how much it really plays into the strength of your immune system and your overall health. Even if you take a look at like an Adwala or a Naked drink, you think they're healthy fruits and vegetables. If you actually take a look, they can have as much as 50 to 60 grams of sugar in those drinks, over double what you should be taking in on a daily basis. So pay attention to the labels. And even nowadays too, they're getting so good at hiding sugar, turning it into high fructose corn syrup and sucralose and all these things that are just very detrimental to the health of the body. But take a look at labels and be aware of your sugar intake. That's one of the biggest problems we have in the society in the U.S. is high sugar.
So Ben, what would be what should we be putting into our bodies as far as sugar each day, as far as milligrams or whatever the measurement is?
On average, you're probably looking at 30 to 40 grams of sugar, and not exceeding that. But even if you take a look at white bread, wheat bread, all these things convert into high levels of sugar. So, we could probably spend a couple hours talking about dietary stuff. But I think, if you started with one thing, just being aware of sugar, it's a great place to start.
And it's a simple one because you can read the label. It'll tell you what sugar you're putting into your body on that product.
Right. Exactly. One of the other things that I like to practice on a daily standpoint is meditation. I think that's really important for the brain and the overall health. A lot of times will choose a breathing pattern to do with my meditation, so I can kind of do both at one time. And a lot of times I'll do that right in the sauna. So I try to combine things that can be done together for the ultimate benefit. So if I go in the infrared sauna, I'll do a breathing, I'll do some meditation, I'll do some spinal molding. And being able to combine these things to help from a time standpoint. And that's why I like the high intensity workouts too.
To the advice of for my own information, as well as the Bamboo Pack listeners, would you say to start off? And I asked Sam Calawart this last week. I have a difficult time with meditation. I try it so often. The most I've been able to get to is 12 minutes. But really, it's one of those things I put on my to-do list quite often, and I just kind of forget about it. Intentionally forget about it.
Right.
What's a good way to start, Ben, with just some basic meditation?
I would recommend doing an app that, if you find you're having a hard time meditating like on your own, there are several apps out there for meditation. A lot of them are very good. Headspace is one that I've used in the past. I've been using this breathing app called Other Ships, where they give you like a couple free weeks to try it as a trial. And then because if you're breathing and doing breath work, your mind can't think of other things. which is good. And then you're able to accomplish the meditation aspect.
I love that. And I understand intellectually the importance of meditation. I know what it does for our body. We had a guest on, Jonathan Rand, the author of 100 and 200 books published, another fellow Michigander, and he does meditation. He gave a really good example of, he said, our lives and our heads are like a glass jar it's got water, it's got sand, it's got mud in it. And he said, and all day we're moving, and that's just all circulating. And he said, when you stop, to meditate, all that sediment settles down to the bottom. And that's where the clarity comes. And I thought that was such a unique way to describe and metaphor for what meditation really does for our minds and our bodies. Is it kind of all the sedation goes to the bottom. All that dirt and sand and mud settles, and we have clarity. I thought that was just a great way. It hasn't really made me do more meditation yet, but I can at least have a symbol of what I'm doing for my mind and body when I try to meditate.
It is a great analogy. And I think, like anything, the more effort you put into it, the more you build that muscle, the better it becomes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, I want to go back real quickly because you had mentioned as you're writing this book that the concept of the book could be something or making disease optional. Can you just give us a little summary of what that would look like, or what that means to you, and how we might be able to do things to make disease more optional?
I think health it's a wide variety of many things. There's many components to health, and most individuals they just don't have the knowledge to know what should I be doing from a movement standpoint? What should I be doing from a dietary standpoint? What are things that I can do to make my body stronger? And the whole premise behind this book and making disease optional, the pain came from losing my dad and wanting to make sure that what could people do to be able to give themselves the best opportunity to be strong and healthy down the road. And that's what that book is based off of. And, I have the outline in the beginning portion that I'm working on, but it's going to be simple, everyday things that people can incorporate. It doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't have to cost a lot of money, things that they can do to start changing the direction of their health and setting themselves up for the best opportunity to be healthy down the road. You had mentioned previously, and one of the biggest components I think that I'm going to hit on in the book is making sure you have a properly functioning nervous system. Mm-hmm. So you had mentioned, when Dawson came in and the asthma, and you weren't really sure what happened. You just know that he was better. Kind of the premise behind that, and really every patient that comes in, is we check their nervous system. If I kind of give a brief, we talk about our brain, which is the forefront of our nervous system, sends these impulses, these signals that go down the spinal cord, out our nerves, that go to really every part of our body. So your heart that beats, your lungs that breathe, the stomach that digests. It's all dependent on the brain signals getting to those organs and then back up. And that's really what our nervous system does for us. It controls all 11 systems of our body. Well, what happens is just like our skull protects our brain, our spine is our suit of armor for our spinal cord. So when all these vertebrae are lined up correctly, we have these proper curves. We're straight up and down from the front, 3 curves from the side. All those signals get to our body. But the problem is we have stress in life. Stress hits us. We have stresses of physical, like major traumas. We have repetitive stresses. I mean, we take a look at repetitive, like we all have iPhones. Mm-hmm. Heads are looking down. We're texting, putting stress to the spinal cord and the spine. But we also have chemical stresses, things that we're just exposed to in the environment, things we put into our body, and we also have emotional stresses. So we have physical, chemical, and emotional stresses. And when our body is under stress, areas of our spine shift. And that shift is called a subluxation. It's a chiropractic term for a misalignment. And what it does, Brian, is it impinges on that spinal cord nerve root, and it affects those signals going to the body. And that's what we identified on Dawson. When he came in, he had a subluxation in his upper back, and it was slowing the signals to his lungs. As a chiropractor, I don't specifically treat asthma. I don't treat cancer, heart disease. I don't treat neck pain, back pain, headaches. But what I do is I look to the spine for interference. Is that nervous system being interfered, and it's affecting the communication from your brain to your body? And I would say that is the most important thing, because we can put the best foods in our body, we can exercise, but if our brain is not getting the signals to our body, we will never be as healthy as we can be. And so that's kind of where the premise of what we do in our office is to check the nervous system, remove interference from the nervous system, because your body has this natural born ability to be strong and healthy. You just got to give it the right tools.
Subluxation. How do I spell that?
SUBLUXATION.
Okay. I had one letter off. Subluxation. That's great. I had a client out in California that I work with on a weekly basis, and 4 or 5 weeks ago, he had talked about he thinks he might need to go see a chiropractor, and he knew nothing about chiropractic. I said, hey, I've got one connection. Of course, he's in Michigan, but I said, you got to check out this approach he uses called the Gonstead approach. I said, I just know from what Dr. Gillis has shared with me, it's just the next level. And I share with him that it helped myself and it helped my son. And can you give us a quick summary of what that Gonstead approach is, Dr. Gillis?
Yeah, kind of from the beginning, I didn't know. When I went to chiropractic school, well, I should back up. When I injured my back in college playing basketball, I saw a chiropractor in Sault Ste. Marie, and I knew nothing about different types of techniques. I went to a chiropractor, and it just happened to be he did the Gonstead method. So I went in, and he adjusted me several times and changed my life around. So here I went to chiropractic school, and we were taught all these different techniques. Well, I ended up having an injury right before chiropractic school. I was having all this pain in my hip. Well, here I was at chiropractic school getting adjusted 3 times a week for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I was getting no results. And I actually got a little frustrated. Here I went to chiropractic school because chiropractic changed my life. And now I had which I thought was a chiropractic problem, and I was at school, and it wasn't changing my problem. So I was a little frustrated. Luckily, one of my classmates, Alex, his dad was a chiropractor down in Austin, Texas. When I was going to school in Dallas, we went down after the first semester to go hang out in Austin. And I was explaining to his dad what was going on with my hip and groin area. And he goes, oh, let me take a look. And he did an evaluation, gave me an adjustment. And just like that, for the first time in 15 weeks, I could walk without pain. And I said, wow, what was that? And he explained to me the Gonstead method. And so then I decided at that point, wow, there is a difference there. So the Gonstead method is a little bit more of a specific analysis of the spine. And it's a very specific type of adjusting. Chiropractic in general gets amazing results. But the Gonstead method really kind of specializes in that 20% where other people fall into if they're not getting results. It's just a very specific and unique approach from the adjustment, the analysis, and kind of the premise behind it is you find that specific subluxation that's causing the cause and you fix that.
So if, as a layperson like myself, I'm looking at one is more shotgun where Gonstead method is more laser.
Exactly.
Right. I'm simplifying for effect, of course.
Yep, that is exactly right.
Well, however you describe it, the method works. I can tell you that, and I have had so many of my friends and business associates in the Grand Rapids community that have gone to Dr. Gillis in the past or still do. And you hear nothing but praise. And I recommended several friends when I lived in East Grand Rapids to Dr. Gillis, and everything, and literally every single person came back praising his work, his staff, the bedside manners, the education they received. It's all, well, it's 4.9 out of 5 stars online. So I would say that says it all right there. Well, you got a lot of things going. What's next for you, Ben?
What is next? That's a great question. For me, the book probably is going to be the big next step. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time in the day and the week to dedicate as much as I would like to it. So I don't have a timeline on it. I'm hoping maybe by the end of next year, but that really is the big next step for me.
My Apple Watch just went off and said it's time to stand. Should I listen to you or should I stand? Do I want? That's a small step right now, so I don't regret it later.
Well, that's a good habit right there. Get moving. Sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah, exactly. I can tell you that there are some great book coaches out there that I'm starting to potentially work with one next month or maybe September, that kind of guide you along and get you going through the process. And they give you homework assignments and you get it done. They edit, they review what you've written and things like that. So if you wanted some information, I have a guy actually in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that might be a good connection for you down the road. So
sounds great.
So, Dr. Gillis, as we've discussed, as we begin to wrap up, are there any questions that I haven't asked that you wish I would have, or is there any final message you want to leave with the Bamboo Pack members?
Final message. I would say the nervous system is so important to the overall health of the body. If you were going to take one step, find a specialist in the nervous system. Find a Gonstead chiropractor. Get your nervous system checked. Because everything in your life will work better when the brain is communicating to the body the way it should be.
Perfect. Okay. Well, Dr. Gillis, do you do any work online, or are your patients primarily coming from the West Michigan area?
Typically come from the West Michigan area. We've had several that have come from the UP and around the country, but the majority come from the West Michigan area, just because a lot of times, depending on what's going on, there is some frequency of care that's needed to correct issues.
Great. Well, I can tell looking at the statistics and our demographics, we have a large following in the West Michigan area. So all of you Bamboo Pack members out there, I would get online, Gillis Family Chiropractic. I'm going to be including the website link in the text of this podcast next week or when it comes out. So please get on there, check out the team, what they do, their specialty, their experience, read some of their patient testimonials, and give Dr. Gillis and his staff a try. I don't guarantee a lot, but I can darn well close to guarantee, as much as I could possibly guarantee anything, you're going to walk away a much healthier and much happier person. So, well, Dr. Ben Gillis, my friend, I really appreciate the time you took with us today. This was extremely educational for me. I took a lot of notes, and I'm going to just recap real quickly the key things Dr. Gillis shared. Sleep, practice, get better patterns, sleep patterns, consistent sleep patterns. Avoid snacking before bed. Focus on your breathing. Movement. Focus on your movement. If you can take a sun and sweat those toxins out, do so. But we can all do cold showers or jumping into cold lakes or rivers. Really be careful of the sugar intake you put into our bodies. 30 to 40. Is it milligrams, Dr. Gillis? Or grams or?
Yeah.
Okay, per
grams.
day. And then try meditation. He gave a couple of apps, one called Headspace, another one called Other Ships. Try those. Try this concept of meditation, because it scares me. It scares most people, but it's really not scary. It's an irrational fear, and maybe those apps can help some of us get through those. So, Dr. Gillis, I just want to take the time and tell you how much I appreciate you as a human being, as a professional, and what you do for your patients and the community of West Michigan. And I want to thank you for being such an amazing guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
I really appreciate it, Brian. I've enjoyed my time with you and wish you the best, and all the listeners of the Bamboo Lab. If you guys ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at my email, bengillisdc@yahoo.com.
That's bengillisdc@yahoo.com. And I'll also include a link to your website so they can get a hold of you there as well. So, Ben, can you stay on the phone for a few moments after?
I sure can.
Wonderful. Well, Bamboo Lab listeners, the Bamboo Pack members, I want to take this time to thank you again for tuning in to this wonderful podcast with Dr. Ben Gillis from Gillis Family Chiropractic out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. In the meantime, we'll talk to you again next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, please get out there and sculpt your life. Strive for your best. Show love and respect to others. And by all means, live consciously. Take care. I appreciate you all.